Hey, sports porchers! It's your hockey Jesus, and I'm back. I got a little new setup, and I'm just thrilled that NHL hockey is coming back, not only to Pittsburgh, but to disciples of the hockey Jesus everywhere. Look, this is my third year. I am just ready to go. The Pittsburgh Penguins are getting ready to start another season. I am here all season long for you, my disciples out there in National Hockey Land, also known as the NHL. So what you need to do right now is smash that button, become a disciple, hit the subscribe button, and you will get the Hockey Jesus all year long. I will be here after every single Pittsburgh Penguins game. And, I don't just talk about the Penguins. I talk about the state of hockey. And that is exactly what we're going to be getting into right now. First, let's start with your Pittsburgh Penguins. That's right. We're a little new this year. We've got some new players. Jake Gensel, no longer with the team. We knew we kicked him to the curb last season and got better, actually. But let's talk about who made the team this year. So let's start with the forwards. You have Rutger McGroarty starting. You got Michael Bunning. You got our buddy, Drew O'Connor, also known as the DOC. Kevin Hayes. How did we get him? Well, we got him from St. Louis. There were some trades. There's, a little bit of concern about his salary cap hit, but let's see what he can do. We got Jesse Puljujärvi. He's back. Tanner Glass, he's a new face straight out of Nashville, so he's going to bring a little grit to the game. We picked him up last year, Lars Eller. He's still around. We got Pusty, Valeri Puustinen is back. Noel Acciari's back. Ricard Raquel, one of your favorites, I know, Evgeny Malkin. That's right, he is back for another season. We picked up Anthony Beauvillier. I'm really not sure how we got him. I know he was playing for the Islanders. I think they were done with him, and we just kind of said, yeah, we'll take him. And in his 19th NHL season, your captain, Sidney Crosby. Notice I didn't say some names. We'll get to the injury list here in a second. On defense, we got Jack St. Ivany. He played last year, got injured. Ryan Shea's back. We picked up Matt Grzelcyk from the Boston Bruins. Ryan Graves is back for his second season after a somewhat disappointing first season. I expect a big rebound from him. Marcus Pettersson's back. Not signed to a long-term contract yet, but I believe that will happen soon. Chris Letang and your buddy, Mr. Carlson. That's right. We picked him up last year. I know you said he didn't play well last year, but he got enough points. He's going to be all right this year. And in the net, we got your buddy, Tristan Jarry. And no, it's not Ned. He's on the IR. But we got Bloomquist. That's right. Bloomquist is going to be starting as the backup. And as I said, there were some names missing from that roster. Blake Lizotte, we picked him up from LA. He'll be playing for us, but he's starting the season on the injury list. Him and Brian Rust. Needle Nose Ned Nedeljkovic. He's on the IR to start, and Nieto is also on the IR to start. So you'll see some names shift around all year long. That's why you need to stick with your hockey Jesus. I will tell you how it is. So with all these new names, you might be asking yourself, what does that mean for the Pens this year? Well, it means that Rust is not going to be starting on the first line, or Gensel will not be starting on the first line for Sid, I think in like 7 years, to be honest with you. So this is a good mix-up for the Pens. I love to see Sid having to play with new players. He will be just fine. Trust me. Sidney Crosby can play with anybody. The problem is can anybody play with Sidney Crosby? Well, Drew O'Connor is going to get a chance to be up there. And it looks like Anthony Beauvillier is going to play on his right wing, only because he's a fast skater. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys, like I will all season long. I am not a big Anthony Beauvillier fan, but I tell you what, if he can get a goal in the first game, he could turn the hockey Jesus round into one of his faithful. And on the second line, you got Gino looks like Bunning's going to be on the left wing and Raquel's going to be on the right wing. They actually look really good in the preseason together. So I have high hopes for that line, to be honest with you. Hard to know what the first line is going to be like. Never seen those guys play before. And on the third line, you're going to have Lars Eller, and probably Rutger McGroarty and Puljujärvi on the right wing. I'm very excited for Rutger McGroarty. I was not. Maybe you saw some of the preseason stuff that I did with the counselor, my buddy Scott. He's going to be with me this year. I promise. You'll see a few things with Scott and I. 100% sure of that. And I was a little down on Rutger McGroarty just because I thought he was a little slow. I thought he needed some help, but he really got better as the season went on, the preseason, that is. And I have high hopes that he's just going to continue to learn. He's never going to be a fast skater. He's not going to dazzle you with his speed, but he plays a tough game, and that's absolutely something the Penguins have been needing. Kind of like Bunning, only actually more, I would say, tougher than Bunning. Bunning's kind of a pest. McGroarty can actually be somebody hard to play against, and that's very important in the NHL. And on the fourth line, looks like Tanner Glass is probably going to be the center. Kevin Hayes can play center too, so I don't think it really is going to matter who's going to play center down there with Noel Acciari on the right wing. The defensive pair is hard to know because Carlson didn't play at all in the preseason, so I don't know he's going to be paired with 100% certainty, but it looks like Letang and Grzelcyk are probably going to play together. Pettersson and Carlson. Look, they played together most of last season, I think 40-some games together. Chances are they'll probably play together. And then the bottom pair, I'm not really sure. It's hard to believe that Ryan Graves has made his way to the bottom pair, but after last year's showing, that's probably where he belongs. Honestly, he might belong on the bench, but he's got a pretty hefty salary. They're going to play him. He'll play with probably Jack St. Ivany. There are two righties, which is weird, which is why Ryan Shea might also get a start. Hard to know. It's really not that important. But, I was listening to a very prominent NHL broadcaster, and he said, the important thing with Grzelcyk, he's one of the new defensive guys, is to limit his minutes. So I don't know if he'll play with Letang. Letang is definitely going to play, 23, 25, 26 minutes a game. He said the key with Grzelcyk is to keep him below 23 minutes. So the play with Letang or Carlson, he might spell a little bit. You'll probably see Letang and Carlson together. In fact, speculation is because Rust is out that he'll probably Letang and Carlson will both be on the power play, the number one power play, which we haven't seen two defensemen on the first power play. I can't remember when I saw two defensemen on the power play, even in the bad years when we had Gonchar around, and Gonchar was one of the best power play specialists. He never played with another defenseman. So I think it'll be interesting to see how that works. So that's the Penguins roster. What are the expectations for the Pittsburgh Penguins this year? Well, I happen to look up the NHL odds on moneypuck.com. By the way, check out moneypuck.com. They do a great job of percentages if you want to know kind of where your team stands, whether you're a Pittsburgh Penguins fan or any fan of the NHL. They give odds for all the teams, whether they're going to make the playoffs. And unfortunately, your Pittsburgh Penguins are now third out on the Eastern Conference. As you know, if you watch the Hockey Jesus, 8 teams from the East and 8 teams from the West will make the playoffs. Traditionally, if you get 45 wins, you're going to make the playoffs. That's going to give you 90 points. We don't like to talk about loser points, but they do count as points, even though I don't like the loser point. The loser point is when your team ties and then ends up losing in overtime or in a shootout. You still get a point, but if you win, you get 2 points. So I like wins and losses. I'm going to stick with that all season long, but I will give you point totals. I believe 45 is the magic number for any team to make the playoffs. I think the Pittsburgh Penguins, that's absolutely where they're going to need to get is 45 wins. And if they do, they'll make the playoffs. With this prediction, though, the Pittsburgh Penguins are 33.6% probable of making the playoffs. That's not good. But here are the teams in the East that are predicted now to make the playoffs: Carolina, Florida, the New York Rangers, Tampa Bay Lightning, Toronto, New Jersey Devils, Boston Bruins, and the New York Islanders. And the New York Islanders have a 49.1% chance of making the playoffs, by the way. So the Penguins have to improve by about, 16, 17% in order to make the playoffs. And that's doable. I think it really is doable for the Penguins. I would consider them a bubble team. Also on the bubble is Detroit, Buffalo, Philadelphia. I guess I'd throw them in the mix at 24% and Washington at 22.5%. I'm not going to spend too much time in the West, but just so you know, the teams in the West are looking to, be probable of making the playoffs this year: Edmonton, Dallas, Colorado, Vancouver, Vegas, Golden Knights, the LA Kings, Nashville Predators, and the Winnipeg Jets. Just out of the playoffs: Minnesota, Seattle, and then you have a slew of teams like St. Louis. And that's right, Utah. I'm going to say it. Utah, the Utah Hockey Club, and Calgary Flames. So those are your teams. That's the expectations for those teams coming into the preseason. Games start tonight. Technically, there were 2 games that were played in Prague already. The New York Islanders beat Buffalo Sabres in both of those games. They won both of them. So technically, they have 4 points already. Not technically. They do have 4 points already. And Buffalo is already on a 2-game skid. Not a good start for Buffalo. When you go out to a city like Prague, it's probably really tough to make that travel and expect to play well. But if the New York Devils get off to a hot start, they might be a team to watch. Right now, they are, they're in the middle of the pack of the playoffs. They could really make a run at Carolina, I think, and even the New York Rangers to win the Metro. What's the season breakdown look like this year? Well, for the Pittsburgh Penguins, I have to tell you, and we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail. The first 10 games are really important for the Penguins. Your hockey Jesus, like to break it down in quarters, but this year it's going to be a little bit hard to break down in quarters because there's this thing after the February 8th game called the Four Nations Tournament. There's going to be a little tournament played between some of the hockey players between February 8th and February 22nd. That's technically considered the All-Star break. So in order to break it down so that that's kind of the midway point, which really isn't the midway point, you've got 20 games that the Penguins are going to start with. Then they're going to go 21 games. That'll take you to January 5th. So about the beginning of the year. That's where the halfway point of the season is going to be. That's pretty traditional in the NHL. And then you'll get a big break in February. So you go January and February, just a few games in February for the Penguins. And then you'll get a big break. And then you'll have 25 games at the end of the season. That's where all the teams are going to make it or break it. There will definitely be 4 or 5 teams that'll have it all locked up. They say you got to have a winning record by Thanksgiving. I'm not a big fan of that stat. I think that's a little too generic, but it is absolutely true. You will need 45 wins to get into the playoffs. And let's talk about how the Penguins can get there. And we're going to start by just talking about the first 10 games. You got to come back every night. I will tell you the progress of these Pittsburgh Penguins throughout the whole season. Stick with me. I know what I'm talking about. I first started watching hockey with Mario Lemieux when he was just a rookie, and I have not turned it off since. I have a feeling I know what I'm talking about when I see trends. I'm an engineer by trade, hockey Jesus by night. So I've got the analytical mind to help you guys navigate the NHL season. I will tell you when the NHL is messing up because they mess up a lot, let me tell you, mostly with targeted hits to the head and things like that. You will hear me go ape shit crazy. I promise you, when something terrible happens, stop by and get that analysis. But for now, what we're going to talk about the Penguins' first 10 games. They've got a really rough stretch in the first 10 games. Why do I say that? Well, mostly because they have 7 road games and only 7 road games and only 3 home games. And their home games Where's my calendar? Gotta find it so I can talk logically to my flock, to my sheep. Here we go. So tomorrow night, I already knew this, but I want to make sure I had them all in front of me. The Pittsburgh Penguins play the New York Rangers. The hockey Jesus will be in the arena cheering on the boys. But their games at home include the New York Rangers, the Buffalo Sabres, the Carolina Hurricanes. Two of those teams made the playoffs last year. Buffalo just missed. Well, they actually fell a little bit behind last year, but Buffalo's still got a very talented team and they're off to a pretty rough start. They're gonna play us tough at home for sure. And then on the road, we play at Detroit, at Toronto, and at Montreal. Detroit's not supposed to be a playoff team this year, but they're on the bubble. That's the second game that the Penguins play. Those back-to-back games versus the Rangers tomorrow night, and then at Detroit. That's a really rough start. And then you got to go at Toronto and then at Montreal. Now, Montreal seems like a cake game. The Penguins have not traditionally played well in Montreal. So that's a really rough start for your Pittsburgh Penguins. Then after you come home and play Buffalo and Carolina, guess what? 4-game road trip, their second highest road trip of the season, and they get to head to the West Coast. They'll be playing at Winnipeg, at Calgary, at Edmonton. That's right. The team that almost won the Stanley Cup last year came so close. I hope you go back and see some of the analysis I did during that Stanley Cup Finals. Those Edmonton Oilers almost came back in 7 games. That would have been historic, but they didn't. So they're hungry. And then we got to go out to Vancouver and play Pittsburgh Penguins West. That would be the Vancouver Canucks and our buddy Rick Tocchet. So you got to come back. I'm here. I'm going to be here all season. That's my preseason analysis. Let me just give you a little breakdown of what I think is going to happen in the first 10 games before I sign off here. I think in the first 10 games, clearly if they go 0-10, it's a disaster. Mike Sullivan will be fired as head coach if that happens. If they start out 3-7, that is definitely a very, very, very bad start. But I don't think it'll necessitate Mike Sullivan getting fired. The probable scenario will be that the Penguins start 5-5 or 4-6. I think if they start 5-5 or 6-4, that's going to be a good start for them. I think they should be happy with that. That probably means they split on the road and take 2 or 3 at home, or maybe even steal one of those games at Detroit or at Toronto. And the best possible outcome would be 7-3. That's a pipe dream, I'll be honest with you. If the Penguins start 7-3, we might get Stanley Cup fever here in Pittsburgh before we know it. So, the Pittsburgh Penguins are back. That's right. Your Pittsburgh Penguins are back. The NHL is back. And I, your hockey Jesus, will be here all season, slinging it to you. I hope to make disciples out of each and every one of you, but you got to hit that subscribe button. You got to come back and listen to the Hockey Jesus, because I will be here all season. And after every podcast, I say it loud and I say it proud. Let's go, Pens. Hockey is back, baby. Let's get it. I'll see you in the next one.